Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren and I'm Maureen. So we're going to be playing you a video of two white women who are talking about LGBTQ, but for some weird reason ended up talking about slavery, and it is what they said that is going to shock the living daylight out of you. So let's just watch this video and then come back and talk about it.
If we go back like a couple hundred years, it was pretty normal to own slaves. Is that right or correct?
Why are we talking about slavery?
Because I'm showing you why the ad populum fallacy is a logical fallacy.
Honestly, back then, a lot of black people participated in the slave trade themselves, so...
Yeah, that doesn't make slavery right. Are you trying to defend slavery?
It was a product of the time, dude.
Are you trying to defend slavery?
Did you not see Matt Walsh's new video on this topic?
I did, and I think that defending slavery is cringe as
defending slavery, but I think we're illogical if we didn't realize that a lot of black people enjoyed being slaves back when slavery was a thing.
Well, how do you know that black people enjoyed being slaves?
I mean, it's just in history. I've read about a lot of black people not only participated in capturing slaves, but a lot of black people enjoyed being slaves. Because of course, when you're really? Brought up doing something like being a slave your whole life, it's all you know. I'm sure a lot of slaves probably enjoyed it and were happy because that's the only lifestyle they were aware of.
That's crazy.
Can you not think like that? Like, is it really that dense?
I have never heard of somebody enjoying having to work countless hours on a plantation, being dehumanized and whipped and told that they're not human, and being beaten within an inch of their life, and being
saying that.
I don't think that people enjoyed that.
You can't deny the fact that there were probably slave owners that, just like there were really bad ones, there were probably slave owners that probably treated their slaves really nice too, right? Like, you're not thinking logically. You're being so dense.
So I'm just going to say that in general, I think it's wrong to own humans.
Of course. We're not in that time period anymore.
But you're defending slavery.
I'm not defending it. I'm saying it was a product of the time.
You said that black people enjoy being slaves.
I think there were probably a good majority of black people who back then were born and raised as slaves, probably because that's the only thing they knew. It was the environment they grew up in. If they had a slave owner who treated them well, they probably enjoyed their lives, a few of them. I think it's illogical to believe that every person who was a slave back then hated their life. I truly think that's illogical. I do.
I'm pretty sure that being owned is not a good thing.
Because you grew up in this generation and this is what you've been taught, and we know these things now.
No,
but back then,
not just because
those societal standards were not created yet.
Not just because I grew up in this generation, but because I can think logically and morally on this topic, and why it is unfair to own another human based off of their birth as having like a certain skin color, for example. That's unfair.
I'm pretending like I'm saying it's okay to own slaves now, because that's not what I'm insinuating.
You are defending slavery.
I'm not defending it. I'm just giving you the facts. Aren't you all about facts over feelings?
Yeah, and I believe that slavery is immoral.
Right, and I do too. But the fact was, back then, I think you're illogical if you think that some of them didn't enjoy being slaves or enjoy their lives.
Why would anyone enjoy being a slave?
That's the environment you grew up in. That's all you've ever known. So if you grew up in that environment and you have a slave owner who treats you well, that's just all they know. So they probably were happy about it. They didn't know freedom. Why is it so hard for you to understand this?
What does like a slave owner treating their slave well look like?
I mean, back then, I'm sure some of them, I'm pretty sure they fed them, right? Or probably that like they weren't whipping anybody or like not tormenting anyone. Just like, I don't have like specific details for you.
Okay, as long as you're working inhumane hours on plantations, but you're being fed, then that's a good thing.
Again, I'm not saying slavery was a good thing. You're not going to like try to make it seem like that's what I'm saying, because I don't know what you want me to say. If you want to believe that every person back then who was a slave hated their life, go for it.
Wow. You guys, for someone to think that another person being enslaved was a good thing and that they enjoyed being in captivity, that's just messed up. But some people came out and they had a lot to say about what she said. So let's look at what black people said to this woman, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
A lot of black people enjoyed being slaves back when slavery was a thing.
This is why they don't want to teach critical race theory, and this is why they're politicizing it and bringing it to extremisms, to make sure that we don't have a narrative on our truth, right? Your people dug up mummies and ate them for a beauty standard. Your people captured us, cut off our genitalia, and put them in museums. There are vintage furniture that is filled with our hair because your people cut our hair off and use it as plush. You used our skin as leather for bookcasings. You built zoos and put us next to animals in cages on display. Right? The first pornographic entertainment, earliest, was Sarah Bartman, who y'all cut her genitalia off and used her organs and experimented and put them up in a museum. You used our babies as alligator bait and then proceeded to put them on stamps and use it as a mailing across the world. What is wrong with you? You had picnics under burning bodies. Picnics. Then took pictures of those picnics. Then made postage stamps. Postage stamps. I need you to get into what your grandparents were into. We talk about pathology and we talk about how memories are passed down and fears and stuff. You wonder why we have animosity towards you today, because the violence is so ancestral that it is in our veins to not like you. It is literally inbred in us. It is survival. Our hair stands up when we're around you. That's ancestral. I need you to get into what kind of witchcraft your people are into till this day, because sex trafficking and collecting embryos and collecting children and women and men and energy. I need you to get into what your people are into. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. We will never forget. We will never be silent. We will always make sure you know. Never.
To own slaves. Is that right or correct?
Why are we talking about slavery?
So, I've been racking my brain for about 20 hours trying to figure out what is it about this video that bothers me so much. Is it the obvious answer, like the Daughters of the Confederacy talking point about slavery? Is that what? Nah, that's not it. Is it the white woman said something racist online? That's a Tuesday. That doesn't bother me at all. So what is it about this? So I start going through the facts. Okay, there was a debate a couple of days ago. This one clip goes viral. This white woman responds to the clip on TikTok, and then she has some sort of like back and forth on Twitter. And then there's another clip that goes viral that's showing the full context of the clip. And I've actually never even heard of these two before this moment, and I don't follow them. And that's it. That's the part that bothers me. I don't know these two, but I know this whole story because this moment is going viral. That's what bothers me. It's two white people having a discussion about black people, and we ain't even in the room for no reason. And it's going viral, furthering their brands off of the discussion of our labor. I bet you can't unsee it. You can't unsee it now. And the crazy part to me is that this white person thinks that they're like doing good, but they're not. They brought up black people for no reason. Not me agreeing with the white racist woman, but why did you bring up slavery? And once you notice this, you will notice that white debaters use black struggle as their moral baseline in a lot of their arguments. They'll talk about Jim Crow, Black Codes, Civil Rights Act, slavery. They love talking about all of that shit for no reason. And it's a digital version still using black labor to further a white brand, still to profit off of it, even if it's just social capital, and y'all don't see the irony in doing that. It is mind-boggling once you notice it, because all I'm thinking is, this white woman, I ain't never heard of her in my life, but now she's saying something that is literally taught in Texas school books. Like, there's a lot of nuance to that answer that she gave that you completely ignored in her response. So that is wild to me, because like, you're not adequately equipped to have that argument with her, but you brought it up anyway, and all you did was you gave a white racist woman a platform, a megaphone, and virality a couple of times this week, and we're supposed to give you flowers over that. Black people supposed to just tap dance, I can't believe I'm saying this, but again, she was right. You shouldn't have brought up black people for no reason. I can't unsee it now.
Well, I think it's wrong to own humans.
Of course. We're not in that time period anymore.
That's crazy. I think it's wrong to own humans. Of course. We're not in that time period anymore. So if we were in that time period, would you feel differently? Would you feel that it is not wrong to own people? In fact, would you feel that it is right to own people? If you think I'm being uncharitable with this, go watch the entire video, because that is just the tip of the crazy iceberg that this lady is riding on. Good on you, Naomi, for not blowing up on this woman. I could never, but I legitimately screamed when this woman said that some people liked being slaves. There was a whole industry centered around catching runaway slaves that turned into the modern day police system. How the are you gonna sit there and say some people liked being slaves as justification for slavery? That's crazy.
Black people enjoyed being slaves because, of course.
When I tell you my jaw dropped, why would you get on the internet and say that? Why would you get on the internet and say that black people enjoy being slaves? What in your right mind, girl? Girl, what's going on? She said, I'm sure some slave owners were nice. Now also, I don't know what your definition of nice is, but I wouldn't say that disregarding someone's personal freedom, body autonomy, and liberty by buying and owning them is exactly nice. There's no such thing as a nice slave owner. You can't be nice if you own someone. But I feel like this is one of the reasons that this Florida book ban is such a big thing. Our history books are being edited and rewritten, and people are reading them and thinking things like this. Thinking things like slaves enjoyed slavery because they are not getting the full vision of how horrible slavery really was.
We're illogical if we didn't realize that a lot of black people enjoyed being slaves.
Kelly. Oh, Kelly. There was so much propaganda during that time to make folks believe that black people enjoyed being enslaved. And during this very weird debate, which if you haven't watched it already, please do, because Naomi leaves no crumbs. You, Kelly, also say that slavery was just a product of its time. The only thing that was a product of its time is the ignorance in believing that black folk enjoyed being enslaved because that propaganda was all they had access to. Today, now, when you have access to endless research, memoirs, cinema, there is not even a shred of an excuse for this kind of ignorance. Even in your apology, where you correct yourself saying you should have said comfortable instead of enjoyed. Kelly, may I suggest something radical? Like instead of reading the headline of a tabloid article, you read something like Frederick Douglass's memoir. And when you do, try and hold enough empathy to understand the difference between someone who finds moments of happiness within the limitations of their deplorable life so they can survive it, and someone who actually has the freedom to enjoy a comfortable life. Because those two things are not the same.
We're illogical if we didn't realize that a lot of black people enjoyed being slaves.
Forget about the adversarial trolls. She's obviously fishing for the controversy that will end up paying off for her in the future. But let's focus on her message and where it comes from and why it's dangerous. Have you ever heard about the Daughters of the Confederacy? Founded 128 years ago in Nashville, Tennessee, they're still ongoing. Influential women on the south of the United States that managed to win where their husbands lost, which was in the shaping of the minds of the American South. Whitewashing the atrocities of the slave trade and its influence in the American economy, whitewashing the horrors of chattel slavery as somehow a fantasy in which genteel ladies with hooped skirts and broad-brimmed hats strewn with flowers somehow managed to own human beings and still consider them as family. This was in the textbooks of every single one of those adults that you see jeering at black teenagers trying to go to integrated schools and that are now members of the Senate of the United States, as well as its Congress. But Elliot, that's in the past, you say. Now is it? Look at what's happening in Florida nowadays. Look at what's happening in the UK. Look at what's happening in France. People are trying to rewrite history books for a reason, because it works. Now let's deal with my favorite. I think we're being illogical. Always remember something about logic. Something can be syllogistically correct and wrong, both morally and in terms of factual truth. You can turn any stupid, vile argument into something logical. Slavery in itself, at its heyday in the middle of the age of reason. So logic is not a measure for anything. It's an intellectual exercise that can be connected to reality or completely disconnected by it. Or it can be used to justify the unjustifiable.
I'm not going to edit this video. I'm going to keep it short and sweet just because I want to be authentic. In terms of the debate I had the other night, I stand by everything I said about transgenderism. No matter what peer review study you show me, you're never going to convince me that it's okay for minors to go on hormone replacement therapy and transition to another gender. I just feel like that's something that can wait until 18. And I feel like that's an opinion I should be allowed to have as someone who transitioned as a minor. Whether you agree with me or not, I feel like I should be allowed to share that perspective. In terms of what I said about race, I completely, not only did I phrase it the wrong way and I should have said comfortable instead of enjoyed, I honestly shouldn't have said it at all because it wasn't my place. It was something that I read the headline out of in the Atlantic a long time ago, and I didn't really read the article. I think I barely skimmed it, and I should have because clearly it made me say something that wasn't accurate, and now the internet thinks I'm racist. If you want to believe I'm racist, I'm not going to, I can't make you think differently of me. You're going to think what you want. But I shouldn't have said that, and I will apologize for that and say I was wrong because clearly I didn't have the facts right.
So guys, you've had to watch that. I'd just like to ask you your opinion on this matter. You leave it on the comment section. I know you've had to watch what the white woman said, and I'd say she really speaks so ignorantly and she takes some words very lightly, because for you to say that someone enjoyed slavery, knowing very well the history of slavery, how it tore families apart, how people were treated, raped, murdered, and there's another lady who explained what happened in history, how their babies were treated, being used as alligator bait, knowing everything that happened in history and all the pain that it carries with it, and then for a young white woman to come off and say these ignorant things, because I know deep down inside her, she doesn't believe everybody enjoyed slavery. She was only saying that, meaning she had ulterior motives, right? She only said that to get the virality that she wanted, which it worked. It got people's attentions, and her argument for basing that black people enjoyed slavery was that black people participated in slave trade. So let me talk about that particular topic here in Africa, how it happened, right? So you find that in some villages here in Africa, chiefs are people who are entrusted with taking care of villagers. They're the ones who would go steal people from the villages and sell them to the white man. And why were they doing this? Some, if not most of the chiefs, would be threatened by white people that if you don't do this, we will do this to you instead, So also people who are selling others into slavery, some of them did it for survival so that they themselves couldn't be trafficked, So I feel like there's a lot of... That is not an excuse, because they're those ones who genuinely did that out of greed and out of getting ahead in life, betraying your own people. But when you're talking about slavery, you have to think about the families that were left here in Africa. You've lost your family member, be it your child, your son, your daughter, your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, never to see them again. And they were taken to a foreign land where they became strangers, and the family ties were really cut. And like right nowadays, when black people from America can do the ancestral DNA and find out that they come from 1 to 3 part of the world, but it's really bad for someone to just generalize and make people believe that the minority who suffered because they enjoyed suffering. And then she tries and defends it in such a way that she's like, majority of them enjoyed being slaves, and majority of slave owners were good to their slaves. And then when she's asked how are the slave owners being good to slaves, she says that the slaves could be given foods, meals. Can you imagine? she doesn't even factor in the amount of work these slaves had to do for the whole entire day, and sometimes even that food won't be enough to compensate for the work that these people were making, you know,
the whipping they had to endure.
Because America truly has been built because of the backs of the slaves that were there.
Others being mutilated, you know, because they wanted to experiment on their, you know, on their privates. Others being caged as animals, so that to create for their own amusement. But you know, we're not trying to sit here and teach you about slavery or its history and its past. What we're saying is, this white woman, I feel like she spoke out of pocket, and I know deep inside her, she must know that, because she did a follow-up video apologizing, but not really, you know, saying sorry but not sorry, you know. Right. So that is just an entitled, insensitive, ingenuine individual that I say that people shouldn't even give her the attention of the day. But unfortunately, those are the kind of people we are living with today. Because can you believe, in this day and age, a white woman, a white person thinking like her, it means we are still in dangerous times, you know, because you'd expect such a person to be woke. But that's where you also blame, should you say you blame their education system? Because white people, they've been brought up in such a way, and they're not learning from history, meaning they haven't been told enough history of what their forefathers did to black people for them to be able to have that empathy in them, and for them to be able to learn from what their forefathers did to black people. They don't need to be told. Right now, it's as easy as doing research on Google, or going into libraries that hold these, you know, historical books or records, for them to sit down and educate themselves and remove that ignorance, you know, from them. Well, it's never good to wish anything on anybody, but you know, in the Arab countries, modern day slavery is still happening. What I'd like is for that lady to go visit there, and then for one of those, you know, to get her, and then we see how she talks about you know. Also, there was a black person in one of the videos that we've played you, who was saying that black people, you should never ever forget the history of where you come from, especially now that white people are not including enough information on the books they teach your black children. They're not including enough information for them to know what truly happened and how it went down. So it's upon you as parents to make sure that your children never forget what you guys went through, to make sure that your children live with it, in order for them to know how to equip themselves with the information, and when it comes down to it, how to defend themselves when the time calls for it. Yeah, but that's all we're going to say. You guys, we'd like to know what you think about this topic. Leave your comment down in the comment section. Let's interact, let's talk about this. You can leave a like for the video, and if you feel like it's going to help somebody, you can also help us in sharing the video. Thank you so much for watching, and we appreciate you for your time. Let's catch you on the next episode.